Well, kia ora, and welcome whānau to the Aotearoa Educators Collective panel Beyond the Basics. Before we go any further, we're just going to open the session with a quick karakia. Tū taua mai I runga, tū taua mai I raro, tū taua mai I roto, tū taua mai I waho, kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora, ke te katoa, homie, huie, taekie. So welcome one and all to this afternoon's panel session. This is going to be a 60-minute discussion with some of our esteemed guests here on the panel, but it is also an opportunity for all of you to join the conversation as well. So we intend to take about an hour. We are going to open up the session with a brief presentation from each of the panelists. You are invited to participate by asking questions. Stephen Lethbridge is helping us out in the chat box if you've got any questions that you would like to post throughout the session, and we'll come to those after the introductions from each of the panelists. And also just a little bit about the, I'll lead this way. Woo! Aotearoa Educators Collective. So this afternoon's session is brought to you by this new entity, Aotearoa Educators Collective. If you haven't already joined our Facebook group, we do have a growing group there. We also have a Substack, which is the place that you can go to read our articles and our publications. And there is also a website that you can check out. And we are always keen to have people supporting the cause. Aotearoa Educators Collective aims to be a sort of an apolitical group of academics and educators and people that are really interested in giving voice to the idea that we don't want education to be a political volleyball, that we want our education system to be about our young people and to represent the diverse community that we serve. But without further ado, let's get into meeting our panelists here this afternoon. We are joined by three esteemed educators and academics. We have Niki Penny, who has been an educator for over 20 years. She's a passionate advocate for children receiving high quality public education that upholds their identity and values the aspirations of student, whānau and communities. She is the Deputy Principal and Senko at Te Komanawa Rowley School, where she leads curriculum development. Her most important role is that of mum to her beautiful two boys, and they are her why for what she does. We are also joined by Jenny Ritchie. She is the Associate Professor at Te Puna Akapai, the School of Education at Te Henenga Waka Victoria University of Wellington. The contexts for her work are early childhood care and education, teacher education, critical early childhood studies, and education for sustainability. Her teaching, research, and writing is focused on illuminating pathways for education for social, cultural, and ecological justice. She recently co-authored the book, Young Children's Community Building in Action, Embodied, Emplaced, and Relational Citizenship, which focused on findings from an international project on young children's civic action. And last, but of course not least, we have Cathy Wylie joining us today, who is a Taoki Kai, oh goodness, I should have practiced before, Kai Hotu Rangaho, Emeritus Chief Researcher with NZCER. She was a member of the Tomorrow's School Independent Task Force in 2018 to 19, and NZER and of NZEI's Independent Review of Primary School Staffing Puatanga in 2021. Her 2012 book, Vital Connections, Why We Need More Than Self-Managing Skills, built on her extensive experience of research about New Zealand education and the conditions for school leaders and teachers that support or undermine quality education for every student. So thank you for joining us this afternoon, Niki, Jenny, and Cathy. I'm going to be handing over the floor to each of you for a moment, just so you can give us an opportunity, just 3 to 4 minutes, giving us some of your sort of positions on the topics we're covering today. So Niki, can you talk to us a little bit around your thoughts about the mandating of structured literacy and how we should interpret structured literacy as the silver bullet claim it appears to be positioned as at the moment. So, Niki, over to you. You just need to unmute it won't unmute. Stephen, have you got the controls for unmuting?
Stephen is busily looking for the unmuting controls. I can only ask Niki to unmute by the looks of it.
Yeah. How about you, Jenny? How's your unmute button? Oh, this is good. This is a good start to a discussion. So we might need to wrangle in Sarah to work out how we can unmute, because I can only ask to unmute as well.
Yay.
Oh, fantastic. That was going to be a really uncomfortable hour if that continued for much longer. Yeah. Awesome, Niki, over to you.
Cool. So I'm that person. I prepared a few notes, so just bear with me while I go through them, because it's quite a broad-ranging topic, and those who know me well will know I go off on tangents, and 3 minutes isn't long. So for me, probably the biggest challenge in education currently is that as teachers, we're constantly having our ability to teach undermined, and the art of teaching, where teachers have the skills to make decisions that are best for the learners in front of them, is being lost. Our schools are at the mercy of the political pendulum, and we can't progress our education system in a cohesive way if we are constantly going back and forth. You cannot make sustained progress when you are constantly unable to make things sustainable for our schools and for our children. The structured literacy announcements are one of those situations that make me uneasy. Now, before I go forward and we get spammed with people saying pro and against structured literacy, we do structured literacy at our school, and I'm currently training as a BSLA literacy specialist myself. So it's not about the programs themselves. My perspective is it's about the ideology that one program can meet all the needs of all learners across Aotearoa, especially when there is huge pedagogical influence being asserted by those people who literally are invested in these programs being successful. It's their bread and butter. So we need to be wary of those things. In 25 years in education, I have never seen a single program that meets the needs of every single child. We have such a diverse system, and to assume that one thing can meet everyone's needs is quite naive, and it's really dangerous, and it does us a disservice if we cling to that notion and the idea that we will find something that is a silver bullet. There is no such thing. The reason being that any program is only as good as the educators who are actually teaching that program and doing the intervention. If they don't believe in it, or they're passionate about something else, it's not going to work. So we need to be really mindful of that and make sure that we are addressing the lived experiences of our children, their culture, their identity, and what they bring into the classroom, and really developing the art of teaching amongst educators so that they can meet those individual needs. There is no one school the same. My school is very diverse. We're surrounded by schools who are complete polar opposites to us. And to assume that what happens up the road will be successful at my school just doesn't work. It won't work. So we need to be really broad in how we think about things. We do really need programs that work in New Zealand context and are developed for New Zealand specific situations. So many of the programs that are out there aren't. We are our own pocket of awesome here in Aotearoa, and we need to really be celebrating the things that bring us into the spaces that we can be. We need to, as educators, have a broad toolbox. We need to make sure that we're funded to do the PD that's out there, that we come at this with a knowledge base that's strong, and that we can then meet the needs of the learners we have in front of them. My school, for example, I'm not saying we have the be-all and end-all, it works for our school community, but we're BSLA trained, we're reading recovery trained. We've also looked at other programs. We do quick 6 years in intervention. We do all sorts of things, because every single kid in our school deserves the right to the education. And we need to adapt what we do in our classrooms to meet that need. And that's the importance of local curriculum. And I think one of the things that I'm really concerned about is the direction that we are now going with the curriculum refresh. I was really hopeful and really excited about some of the things that were happening with the refresh. And to see us divert from that so much at this stage is really concerning, because I think we're moving away from the art of teaching. Yeah, that's probably me at this point. I could go on for ages, but
absolutely. And I'm sure there's plenty that we're going to come back to. And you're so right in terms of, I met with the minister the other week, and she kept talking about the science of learning, and I did keep saying, what about the art of teaching? It's got to be a balance of the two. Thank you, Niki. We'll definitely be coming back around to a lot of those topics. Jenny, the word evidence-based, or the words evidence-based, seems to be attached to every policy and idea announced at the moment. Are all evidence bases equal? And why should we be wary of this knowledge-based curriculum that we're hearing about at the moment? Oh, now we've got you muted. Did we work out who did the magical unmuting before? There we go.
Sorry about that.
That's all good.
Ngā mihi mahana ki a koutou katoa, ko tai mai tēnei ahi pō, aha kua te taumaha o te ua, kei konei, ki poneke. So we've got a rather miserable afternoon. I hope it's not as miserable for everybody else. So thank you for joining us this afternoon, and thank you to the organisers for inviting me. My focus is on the evidence-based stuff, and 2 decades ago, an Australian educator who I'm I sort of follow, her name's Bronwyn Davies, and she called out the new managerialism that was being brought into education from business models, and it was sort of being imposed into how we operated in education. And she was talking about Australia, but also here in Aotearoa. And what she identified was there was this shifting of the locus of power, which had been seated with the knowledge of the practicing teachers, and that was now being kind of deauthorized and shift across to auditors and policymakers and statisticians, and none of those people knowing anything about the education profession. And she asked some really good questions, these provocations: which evidence should be the base and who selects it? So if we have evidence-based, how are we choosing this evidence? Are those who are producing this evidence or selecting it, are they members of the profession of teaching? How have they chosen what counts as evidence, and how have they selected the particular evidence that's going to be acted on? And finally, how are the links to the everyday practice of teaching being accomplished, and how should teachers, how are they being supported to alter their practice in light of this evidence if it's deemed necessary to do so? And currently, with regard to the consideration of who is producing the currently proposed evidence, we have Michael Johnson being located in Minister of Education Erica Stanford's office as her Chief Educational Advisor. He is a cognitive psychologist and a psychometrician. He's not a teacher, and he works for the right-wing think tank called the New Zealand Initiative, and he's now serving as the chair of this new ministerial advisory group. So some years ago, we had Gert Biesta be a speaker at our New Zealand Association for Education Research conference. And he's an educational philosopher who has critiqued, like Bronwyn Davies, the uptake of this construct of evidence-based practice in education. He says it delivers, in fact, what it delivers is a democratic deficit, because the way that this use of evidence is being shoved in to replace the art of teaching or the professional judgment of teachers is actually shutting down wider democratic deliberation about the aims and the processes of education. And I think that wider shutting down of democratic deliberation is a bit of a characteristic of what's happening in government at the moment. I think the phrases evidence-based or the science of learning becoming these kind of gospel, they really discourage disclosure or critical analysis as to their sources, the agendas behind this particular evidence or science, and how it's being selectively used by politicians and their advisors to direct the work in classrooms. And even the notion of evidence, they have actually, the Ministerial Advisory Group have recognised that their approach to mathematics actually lacks evidence. So this is quite clearly a situation where evidence is being used as a Trojan justification for ideological stances. Interestingly, about a year ago, in May last year, I asked the Ministry of Education what research had they been doing into the impacts of the Decade of National Standards on outcomes for children, and in particular Māori and Pacific children. And the response, no, they hadn't conducted any such research. And at the bottom of the email, there was a little thing: if you are unhappy with this, you can contact the Office of the Ombudsman, Te Tari o Te Kaitiaki Mana Tangata. So I did that. And a year later, I've been informed that they are conducting an inquiry. So watch this space. It will be interesting to see what the Ombudsman comes up with. So really, this whole idea of somebody determining what is the canon, what is the kind of integral content of this allegedly knowledge-rich curriculum is problematic, because we have this handpicked group determining whose knowledges are being privileged and what required texts are going to be, and potentially excluding the knowledges of the majority of children in our schools, since the proportion of Pākehā or European students has fallen. It used to be a vast majority, 74% in 2001, and it's probably 44% in 2023 of our school-age population. So that is no longer the dominant culture of this country, and nor was it ever the one that should have dominated, actually. Claudia Ross from Waipapa Taumatarau, University of Auckland, recently called for us to have a nationwide conversation about what this literary canon of required texts should look like, to ensure that all children are able to connect with it. In a November 2022 ERA report, 19% of tamariki Māori, 1/5 of them, said the reason for missing school was they didn't like or aren't interested in what's being taught. And interestingly, a more recent ERA report on the teaching of the histories, new Aotearoa New Zealand histories curriculum, found that 63% of Pacific and 61% of Māori students agreed that they enjoyed learning about Aotearoa New Zealand histories, but only 50% of Pākehā students agreed, which I thought was kind of weird.
And what's more disturbing is they seem to think it's a reason to rebalance the histories curriculum, where I was going, oh my goodness, this is a reason to celebrate at last.
I know.
And it's just like bonkers.
It is totally bonkers, and so ideologically driven, you know. So I think as school teachers who come from a sociocultural perspective and understand children as being culturally located, understanding that education happens contextually, we tune into children's interests and we build those bridges into whatever it might be in terms of even a predetermined, narrowly defined knowledge-rich curriculum. It's just that some of these bridges will need to be longer bridges than others if the curriculum is narrowed.
Yeah.
So I just think we should be recognizing diversity. We should be complexifying what we do rather than narrowing what we're offering.
And I was lucky enough to be up at Waitangi for Global Women Hui the other week, and I was one of the only educators in the room and talked about this concept. And what I found is actually that conversation around whose knowledge informs the knowledge-rich curriculum suddenly lit up a whole lot of people, because what I found is that the narrative is super compelling to non-educators for the most part. They hear knowledge-rich, they hear structured, they think it all means rigor and something that's high quality. But the moment you started asking that whose knowledge question, there was a whole lot of incredibly, powerful, intelligent women suddenly going, what the heck? Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So I think that's a conversation we need to be having with our communities often and loud at the moment. Okay, thank you. And thank you once again, Jenny. We'll undoubtedly come back to a lot of those topics. Cathy, I'm going to do my ask one mute, because I think that's the key to you being able to actually unmute it at your end, hopefully. There we go. Cathy, the government and media seem to be highlighting a long list of things that teachers can't do. E.g., can't teach reading, maths, science. It appears that we can no longer be curriculum designers, and so on and so forth. How should we go about building teacher capability in a way that values the profession? Because this narrative is not helping.
It's been, I have to say that it's been a long time since the New Zealand education system has actually provided the infrastructure for really good teaching capability in every school. So there's a deficit here. I mean, this current government likes to talk about infrastructure, and actually the infrastructure needed for strong teaching in every school has been lacking for some time. And I find it deeply ironic that here we have these what look like compulsory changes to the curriculum being ushered in with very, very little support. They're not going to work. You know, there's the skeptic in me says that unless people feel that they have to do exactly as they're being told, freedom still exists. You know, it's you know, there's something to be what's going to be really important is that school leaders and teachers think about what they've been doing that works really well, as Niki was talking about. What is the evidence they have about that? And keep doing what they're doing that works really well, and be able to show, using good assessments, you know, the value that they're adding, and the conditions under which they do that. So part of me thinks that it's to do with you know, we are not going to have a cadre of inspectors walking into every school in this country, every kura, and saying X, Y, and Z. We're not in that situation. The next few, as the curriculum rolls out, are going to be really important for the feedback that people give about what they are seeing on the page and how well it will serve their students and how well they are doing at the moment with their full range of students. I was very interested. I had a look at the OECD reviews out there last year. They did quite a comprehensive report on education, and you will find in that report that they say things like the international evidence is more that teaching is more successful if the teachers have a wide range of assessment materials and methods to choose from, you know, and regular opportunities to build teacher capacity to assess through professional development, involvement in school collaborations. So that's the sort of thing that they are saying, that the evidence is there. They also cite the evidence that class sizes are important in terms of teachers being able to be fully capable in what they do. So I think it's really important that over the next few months that the infrastructure won't be there. The OECD also said it's really, really important to have good curriculum advisors working locally with schools. And you know, we haven't had that for so long in this country. But we do have the capacity for schools to work with one another. We've had, you know, I do hear good reports about some kahuiaka, for example, and I know there are other networks where people are sharing good ideas, they're sharing the problems as well, and they're thinking collectively about what we can do about these. So I do think that those professional discussions with people in other schools is really, really important, you know, for the foreseeable future. It's a time to work together rather than turn inward and feel that you're under the rod, because actually it's not going to be possible to police it. And schools are going to have the choice of assessments to use for the next few years. So just choose the ones that are going to suit you. It's not a full draconian right, you know, from next year or even the year after. Everything's going to have to snap into place. So be evaluating, be providing evidence about what is working, what is not working, which students are turning off or failing to be turned on, so that you really do have good evidence. Because and keep asking for this to be properly, keep raising questions about the basis for it all and for it to be properly evaluated. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Cathy. And just a reminder to all the people that are here in attendance, if you do have questions, please post your questions in the chat so we can put those to the panel members. Okay, I'm going to put my my best drama teacher hat on, and I'm going to pretend I'm the Minister of Education here at this panel this afternoon. And quite frankly, enough is enough. The results are declining. how can we just go on doing what we've always done? All of you seem to be hesitant to want to make change. What do we change? What do we stop doing, and what do we start doing? Because you're all telling me that we're already doing good things, and quite frankly, we're not getting the outcomes we want, and we have got underperforming students, and we do need to improve. So over to you, Niki. I want to know, what is it that you're going to stop doing, and what is it that you're going to start doing?
Well, I think one of the biggest things, Minister, is we need to actually have a well-resourced education system. So many of the children that are falling through the gaps are children that we could be doing better for, particularly if we look in the high needs learning space. The amount of support and funding for those students is so woefully lacking that schools are struggling to actually address their needs. And that's a massive factor when we look at all of this data, is there's so much in there that you could pull out and actually enable our kids to succeed. Yeah, that's one. I know the high needs review was sitting there, it was done, all this work has been done, reports like Puotanga, we've got all the stuff that's there that says we know what the direction is. Come to the table and make it work. Outside of that, actually having cross-party collaboration. This political pendulum swinging, it's got to stop.
It's a huge waste of money and time and energy. Nothing else.
We can't sustain anything when every 3 or 6 or 9 or however many years we go back to the drawing board and we repeat the same cycles. Anyone who's been in education for any length of time says there's nothing new. We're just going back to something that was 10 years ago, or it's ridiculous to constantly be going backwards and forwards. Schools have the solutions. They know their needs. They know what they need. Let's put some money into it and enable some, create situations where we can have these kinds of discussions we're having here today. Yeah. We can talk about what are the priorities, because I think until we start doing that, we're not going to make any progress. And we can see systems overseas that have made huge gains. It's when they've been taken out of that political spectrum and they've been able to make sustainable long-term change.
But yeah, I think one of the things that is fundamentally frustrating, I'm not very good at staying in character, I'm going to keep falling out. One of the things that is fundamentally frustrating is this lack of recognition that in order to get equitable outcomes, we're going to need to have inequitable inputs. And the thing that frustrates me is that we are already sitting on the data. We know the communities, we know the schools, we know the groups of learners who need extra resourcing and supports. And this one-size-fits-all solution and standardization is only going to broaden the gap as far as I can see. It seems the absolute opposite of those inequitable inputs in terms of the achieving anything like equitable. I think we've got to be unapologetically focused on doubly resourcing schools that are underperforming and wrap around resources and give them extra staffing and give them their learning support people. And the thing that frustrates me is I can't help feeling it would actually probably cost less in the long run than this holus bolus systematic review and change and creation of sort of ideological branded solutions to these problems. Jenny, tell me, what are you going to stop doing and what are you going to start doing? Tell the minister now.
Yes. Well, I think some of the points that have already been made, I would absolutely endorse. I do think, that, the supporting things that are working really well already and disseminating those models of things that have been effective so that people can go, wow, I'd love to try that. That's something that has come up in previous research projects, and teachers really enjoy hearing about what other people are doing. And I think if we had more sort of release time for teachers to be able to go and spend time in other schools and other classrooms and to share, what has been something that they have found working really, really well. The smaller classes that Cathy mentioned, I think that is, I could never understand how John Hattie would promote that was not a factor. It's just common sense and obvious that the more time you can spend with each individual child, the better outcomes. I never understood that. And I think that I would love to see having social workers or counsellors in every single school, because I have spoken with teachers who say we're not even able to get to the teaching. We're spending so much time on the counselling and the social support and the supporting of the families. So I think that we need to acknowledge that we do have these communities, many communities now, probably going to even be more affected with climate disasters that we're seeing more frequently, that where people are very discombobulated, and children are really not in a position to learn. And, you know, I love Maslow's pyramid, but until they've got their really basic needs are being met, their emotional well-being is in place, so that they are ready to learn. And those are really fundamentals that we can't ignore. That if we're going to be high quality education provision, we need to look after the well-being and the emotional well-being of children first and foremost.
I know I've fought time and time again, and we've had numerous ministry and partner meetings with a whole lot of different providers about the idea of setting up some health and community hubs in the space of our school. I'm always absolutely floored by this incredible expensive real estate we're sitting on in schools, and the sort of resources that might be providing the broader community 24/7 in terms of, you know, opening up the libraries, opening up, you know, once upon a time we had dental clinics and nurses and health clinics and the different community groups, and also just funding the bloody lunches, for God's sake, you know, and yes, not doing it in a way where you're killing local businesses. It's absolutely, again, bonkers that you'd go to the centralized model that is not only not meeting the needs of the students with the quality of food that it's going to be providing, it's also killed community businesses and infrastructures in the meantime, which, you know, doesn't even begin to make sense in terms of meeting the needs of the communities that they are trying to serve. That was such a, you know, they kept talking about their bloody social, what's their social
investment.
Yeah, social investment. Wasn't that the perfect example of social investment? Getting your local businesses to feed them? It was a gorgeous example of that. Cathy, you must be sitting there sort of just going, oh my goodness, we did a tomorrow's school review with so many. I know I sat through the lockdowns, having been part of the 21st Century Reference Group, and we had put together a whole lot of recommendations that would have closed the digital divide. So you spent 3 years going, oh my God, why didn't they just do what was recommended? Why didn't they do what was recommended? I can't help thinking that you must be sitting there feeling that there was so much in that tomorrow's school review document that is exactly what we need right now in terms of those hubs that support educators, in terms of re-centralizing resourcing, in terms, I mean, do you want to talk to some of your ideas about what you think actually, if you could be in charge of vote education tomorrow, what is it that you would like to see us doing?
Well, yes, I think that we did a thorough job on that review, and things I've read since, including, you know, some of what the OECD reviewers were saying and other research, it just says, yeah, you were right. You know, actually you have to transform the system. You have to think of an ecosystem. You have to really rebuild the relations of trust so that people are sharing and building together rather than feeling in competition or, you know, let's just hide from the ministry and Aero. Let's just make sure that we're safe. I mean, that's no way to have a successful education system. I have to say it's, you know, COVID came along at a very bad time in terms of the recommendations from that review. And yes, the government wasn't strong enough, I think, to follow through on what we were recommending, because we did see a change, not just simply the Ministry of Education and, you know, new guys. But really trying to get, you know, the focus on professional practice, on people working together, on the excitement of sharing, and not to punish people or to say it had to be done in this particular way, but just to keep building and finding out what was, you know, what worked really, really well in a particular, you know, situation. So yes, it is frustrating. And I, you know, in preparation for this, I looked back at my book Bible Connections, and I thought, oh, you know, yeah, we've been, you know, hobbling since 1989. You know, we've lost a lot of resources, people and money that could have been far better spent, you know, if we had had much better connections all the way through and weren't frightened of those connections and trusted them. So, you know, you asked me, Claire, and I'm saying, you know, how do we, that's why I think it's really important for people to think, okay, the ministry is not going to do it for us at the moment. Aotearoa's not going to do it for us at the moment. We are going to need to do what we can ourselves and do it in a positive manner rather than a you know, yes, there's a certain amount of defence needed, but also building for the future, saying we do know what's good. We can identify that. Let's support each other with that.
Yeah, and I think we've got to that point now when Malcolm asked a good question in the chat here about we're in the position we're in. We've had the announcements and the priorities shared with us. You know, on one level, if I'm wearing my most generous hat, I sort of get that a government comes in and they want to do the right thing. They want to improve outcomes. They want to make a mark and make a difference and all the rest of it. And on one level, I can understand if you weren't an educator in the classroom or leading a school or an academic yourself, it'd be very easy to think that these complex problems can be solved with quite simple solutions. And that it was just a matter of making the decision and investing some money and taking action. And I fundamentally believe that we have a minister and we have a moment where the desire to improve is genuine, and the care about our young people is genuine. But I also think it's really important that we find a way to respectfully push back. I don't think we want to position ourselves as being sort of divisive or combative for the sake of being combative. What are the thoughts that each of you have in terms of what can we do from our seats, from our positions, to speak up about this stuff and to show that we are concerned in a constructive way, in a way that says that we're here for the kids as well. We're collaborative. Like you, we want the best outcome. So it's not saying, no. It's what do you think is your idea? Jenny, I'll go to you first. What do you think we can do?
I think that we already have really good networks in terms of, the teacher unions in particular. And this kind of coalition that's been formed around this new collective that's been established. I think our voices are stronger when we speak from a group rather than as individuals. And I think that you're right, absolutely right, Claire, that it's just going no is not going to really be well received. So we have to figure out how we actually keep those relationships and those communication channels open. I would like to see the Teaching Council be more of an advocate for the rights and needs of teachers. I haven't heard much from them in this space, and I'd like to see them actually be in that space rather than just seeming to sit alongside the ministry. And I think we need to actually challenge in constructive ways specific things that come out. When, for example, Aotearoa is now going to be policing the 3 hours a day of reading, writing, and maths, and I feel for the evaluators in Aotearoa. So I think we need solidarity with our colleagues across the different sectors. We need forums like this where we can actually have a much stronger collective voice of support, as you say, Claire, for the rights of children to have high quality, culturally responsive, really wonderful education.
And not get bogged down in like we've seen it with the structured literacy and different positions on the literacy. This is not about anyone trying to say one thing is better than another thing. It's just about recognising the diversity. What about you, Cathy? Do you have anything you'd like to add in terms of what do you think is the most effective thing people can do to speak up and effectively about these issues and potentially push back a little bit?
Well, I think it is important to point out the shortcomings and say we agree with, this is what's really important for us. This is what we've been doing. This is what has been successful. Here are the things that we've struggled with that still need to be addressed. And we on our own, we've been, working on this for, some years, and we've not been able to make any headway because these are the things that keep getting in the way. And we would welcome, sort of discussion about how to improve this situation. I mean, it's about showing what you've done, that you are sincere and earnest, and that you know what you're talking about, and that you've tried this and these things have worked for this, but they haven't worked over here, and you really, at this, point. You can't see that a narrower approach is actually going to succeed.
Yeah, and it is, as you say, it's doing so whilst acknowledging that we know things need to improve and change. And Niki, I'm guessing that like myself, you're in school on the ground as a current deputy principal and Senko, and I'm guessing one of the things that we need to be pushing for is everyone getting involved in any moments for feedback, trial, and all the rest of it. And that even when we're feeling, because the trouble is it's going to come at the time of year when we're most exhausted, term 3, we're going to have stuff rolled out, and I suspect it will come fast and they'll expect responses fast. So what are your thoughts? Is it about that engaging with those trials when they come to hand as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the time to kind of flex our professional voice in a way that is constructive. There are opportunities to engage, and yes, they're short windows, and it's hard to find the time to really engage in those short windows. But that's our opportunity to voice those concerns as professionals. And it's, if we don't, I've always been a big believer in the worst that can happen is people say no. So you've got to ask, you've got to put forward the perspectives and things like that. And we might get pushback, they might say no, and they might still go ahead anyway. But if you haven't done anything about it, and you haven't spoken up, and you haven't tried, well, then you've failed before you've even begun. Yeah. So this is the time for us, even though it's really hard to be in our schools on a daily basis, to actually put the time and effort into doing submissions, into trialing things, and it's hard when we've trialed things that are now back for retrial, but we have to do it. It's the only way as professionals we can do it. The other thing is, I think, to celebrate the pockets of awesome that are actually out there. There's some really great practice out there. Yes. And I think it's easy for us to get bogged down in media reports and the statistics and things that come out. But there's really great things happening out there. And I think we need to really make sure we're taking the time to celebrate those. My favorite phrase is pockets of awesome. But celebrate those things that are happening and make sure that we're putting that out in the forefront so that people can see there are actual alternatives that work. Yeah.
And tell the stories about our awesome educators who are fantastic curriculum designers.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because I think that's getting lost in the messaging at the moment. We've got some great questions coming through. I have to do a shout out to having a fangirl moment. Question from Rosemary Hipkins. This one's for you, Cathy. Rosemary was just asking about what sort of in-principle changes you would prioritise for the provision of professional learning. What do you think needs to change in terms of professional learning? And Janet, on the back of that, wants to know how we can sustain teacher professional knowledge and practice and experience in the interim, which I think is tied into that professional learning question as well. What do we need to change up?
Well, we've got a situation now where schools are making choices with their own money, but the supply of knowledgeable people is, I think, too limited. And you do, I would like to know that there was a really good cadre of experienced, respected people available in every region in this country, and that you could access them. A bit, the old advisors, they were in short supply, but they really worked.
I was a secondary English facilitator at Team Solutions. It was actually the best professional learning that I've done as an educator as well. So it's a win-win for people. Yeah. So
I think you actually need to be, the ministry moved away from that model of making sure that was, having contracts with people. I mean, they weren't perfect, but the idea that you actually could access somebody locally and that they knew what was going on in other local schools, and they could put people in touch with each other, and they were up to date with things as well. That's what you'd really want, that kind of criterion. You can't get that with short-term contracts and things, or people, finding out that they can't get hold of anybody, and that the person that they respect is not available. So you do have to think we have to build something up, and we have to make sure that it's locally available and not, at a huge expense.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. And also there's questions coming through around how we might celebrate more. Like I think people really liked what you were talking about, Niki, about sort of speaking up and speaking out. What are your suggestions, each of you, about how we can actually celebrate, speak up. It's one thing to say, you know, do we post it on our Facebook page? Do we write a blog post? What are the things you think we can do that will get us sort of collectively? Like I look at, I mean, one of the things that Aotearoa Educators Collective was designed to do was to build a platform for these kinds of celebrations. We're very mindful of the fact that whilst we're primarily speaking up and speaking out about policies and actions, this should also be a platform for celebrating and sharing snapshots. So anyone in the panel today, if you've got a story that you would like to share, something that you're working on, an initiative, something you'd like to highlight, our Substack is there for people to contribute to and to publish those stories and do the shout outs. Our Facebook group is also a really good platform for that. I also wear my Disrupt Ed hat. We've got a community of 6,000 educators over in that space, another great place for you to share your practice. But Jenny, what are your thoughts in terms of how we can best shout out and share and highlight the positive things that are already going on in our education system?
I think that we could collaborate better, probably with the universities, for example. And we do something at our university once a year. We do a seminar for all of our associate teachers. Those kinds of things. If we could do those sorts of things, perhaps more frequently, or for, you know, I think people enjoy coming together face to face. I'm tempted to say, oh, we can use all these lovely social media things, but I actually think people really enjoy being in the same room and having time to just have part of that evening session, which might be focused on whatever it might be, to have side conversations and just do that one-on-one or just in small groups, sharing of things that have been going on. So I think the kahui ako is one of the modes for that. And again, you know, I'm not sure about whether this government is going to continue to foster that, but I think we can be creative in creating spaces for coming together where we do warm to one another and learn from one another.
Awesome. And actually, I'll lean into that kahui ako comment. So I'm lucky enough to be a kahui ako co-lead for Whānau Ki Te Ako, which is the Albany area kahui ako. And I know we're doing a lot of work and sharing around this practice. Anyone else got some views around how we can leverage? Cathy, I know you've looked at kahui ako and the ways that I think whilst it is there, I mean, who knows what the future holds for kahui ako, but at the moment, it is a resource that's available to us. Have you got some thoughts about how we can lean into that community of learning space to highlight these things and highlight our learning?
Well, really taking advantage of the relationships and trust that have been built up there, and to, you know, if people are identifying you know, common things they want to focus on or share what they're doing, to actually visit each other's schools. And to be looking at how new teachers are developed and supported, to you know, just to support each other, to actually look at the evidence you have about how well things are going, and just to look at the sharing and the chance to visit another school and ask questions as you go through it is tremendous. You know, it benefits both the school that's being visited and the people who do the visiting. So, you know, I would recommend that as a way of building. You know, it's good if you can build on trust, but also a good way of building trust. Of you know, having some protocols around it, but actually being able to ask questions about it and to see the students. You know, if one can do that in class, you know, school time, which I know is quite difficult, but it is possible to, you know, to learn a lot after school as well, by looking at what's up on the walls, what is the evidence about the way the curriculum has been structured, what's the evidence of kids making progress, and what contributes to that. You can learn so much through that.
Yeah, and it can be an incredibly powerful networking community. Niki, have you got anything to add around the kahui ako front?
So I'm actually not a member of a kahui ako. So we are a cluster of schools. So we are not part of the kahui ako model. So therefore we don't get any of the funding or any of the other stuff that goes alongside that. So we've kind of done things a bit differently down here. So we have a cluster of schools around here. And I think one of the big things that I noticed from talking to people is there's kind of the untapped potential that sits in middle leadership. So often your middle leaders are the people that lead curriculum in the school, because the principals have to do so much of the management and other things, and they have to wear so many different hats that often, particularly in bigger schools, your DPs tend to be your ones who lead curriculum. We're a small school and I lead curriculum, but I'm very privileged to be able to do that in my school. I think, like, we've got in our area, we've got a group of DPs that get together regularly, and we agenderize things like streaming, and we have big conversations around streaming, which is another passion project of mine, so hence why I had to get it in here. So, you know, having those conversations. So what does that look like in your school? How do you do it? And actually having that time to discuss it, and then empowering our DPs to then go back and have discussions in their schools and share those, what's happening for them. What does that look like? How have they made changes? We've had conversations around curriculum and our local curriculum, because we all in an area that has connections through our cultural narratives, but we're also diverse in how we actually run in our schools and the size of our schools and all sorts. So, you know, creating spaces for professional conversations are really important, but I do think there is a challenge out there around that untapped potential of DPs and APs and team leaders in really big schools who do a lot of that kind of direction about what happens in terms of the curriculum that it's actually in their classrooms, and, you know, how they make it work given restrictions and things like that. So there's lots to be done in those spaces that can actually uplift and support each other. But I think it's that strength of networks, and you can't underestimate the power of a professional conversation, or having those opportunities, as Cathy and Jenny have said, to go and visit other schools and be in spaces to be inspired by other people's work.
Yeah, so someone actually popped in the comments, Kerry commented about educamps, and we used to have those informal meetups. I know we used to have Ignite talks up here at Auckland. Maybe it's time for us to start refostering those networks of coming together and those social learning networks. Rose had another question for us around initial teacher education, and a question directed for all of you around how we might support universities to keep provision of initial teacher education. We'll notice there's been a bit of a narrative and a bit of a suggestion that we're steering towards in-school models of ITE that appear to be uncoupled from universities. Anyone got some thoughts on the ITE and what we can do to support the universities? Jenny, did you want to jump in there? You look like you had a nod going on.
I'm a fan of having diverse models of teacher education, and I don't have a problem with field-based actually as either. I think that there are modes that work better for some people, and I kind of like 3-year teaching qualifications as opposed to the 1-year grad dips. So I'm slightly have my own personal thoughts about that. But I do think, and I have an argument with one of my colleagues about this, I do think that one of the things that has happened to us in the universities, and I've been in teacher education for 34 years now, starting in a teachers college, in the Hamilton Teachers College in 1990. I think that the research that we do, that we bring directly to our students, is hugely beneficial. That provides that almost it's like a fuse gets lit for students when you talk about research, and then they can see it happening in their own practice. So I think that I would like to support the maintenance of teacher education within universities, and to have teachers who value our students support us by being associates for us as much as they can.
Awesome. Anything that you wanted to add, Cathy, around that front?
Oh, I think there's definitely challenges in teacher education, and I think there have been some costs at bringing it into the university, particularly with fees. And you know, when I think about that teacher training was one way, because you could do it for free, that actually brought a lot of talented people into the teaching profession when I was much younger, and to lose that strand, I think it has been very difficult. When I hear that you know, that the 1-year course you only get 30 hours for covering reading or 30 hours for maths, I mean, I just think, how can you be effective? We've got to think not just about the initial programs themselves and make sure that they are actually fit for purpose and available, but we've also got to think about the teacher mentors in the schools. you know, that's they need support. We need to make sure that there's time for new teachers to really feel comfortable and for the mentors to be working with them productively, because otherwise we do lose a lot of new teachers, and we can't afford that.
Now, I'm aware that we're coming into our last 5 minutes, so I want to bring it back around to something that we started with, and something that has actually been keeping me awake at night in terms of what seems to be about the silent disappearance of mātauranga Māori, and the fact that te mai taho just vanished. You go onto the internet now. And I feel like that speaks volumes in terms of where we're going. Yet we had in the MAG report, they talked about the fact that work would be kept, that we would, think that isn't being demonstrated in terms of how things are being represented. Have we got any thoughts? Like, I feel like, Jenny, this might be something that you feel really passionate about. In fact, I know all of us will feel passionate about this. What the heck can we do? I can't help feeling that there's still 87 attendees online. If everyone writes an email tomorrow asking for te mai taho and where is it, that would be a good start. But what else can we do beyond that in terms of really making sure that mātauranga Māori is still at the heart? I mean, it's at the heart of the NALPS. Te tiriti is at the heart of everything we should be doing. It can't possibly disappear, but it looks like it might be at threat of disappearing. Any ideas? Jenny, what are your suggestions?
I think that advocacy is absolutely needed across the board, and supporting initiatives by Māori. You know, there's been a huge number of Waitangi Tribunal hearings recently about some of these incursions into te ao Māori, te reo Māori, and so on. I think that we need to, as an education workforce, show solidarity with Māori when they try and point out what's happening, because I think, and if we don't, if we're silent about it, we're actually aligning with the forces that are anti-Māori, and it's really, really important that we show our solidarity, as you say, Claire, at this point in any way that we can.
Because I know that as a school, and Niki, you may well be in the same, I'm sure you'll be in the same position, we're still making it front and centre. Having a disability-led curriculum is still one of our number one work-ons, and will keep being our number one work on that we talk about. What's your thought as a practitioner, Niki, in terms of what we can do to really push this message that whatever happens, it ain't going anywhere. It's going to be front and centre, and actually we just want the ministry to be reflecting back what we prioritise and privilege ourselves.
I mean, good practice is good practice, and mātauranga Māori is good practice. That's what it boils down to. You know, I'm very fortunate in the community that I'm in that it's an absolute essential, because that is my community. And so local curriculum should reflect the local curriculum, the local, community and things. So Māori is essential to who we are as Aotearoa New Zealand. So having te tiriti as the foundation of what you're doing in your schools is essential. And yeah, it needs us all to, just as we need to stand up for professionalism, we need to all stand up in this space at te tiriti. There's, it's, as Jenny said, there's no sitting on the fence. By saying nothing, you're tacitly agreeing that you are for things to change. So you can't sit on the fence. This is a one time where everyone needs to be vocal, loud, and proud about what we're doing. One of the biggest successes in education has been kura kaupapa, and there's some huge successes to celebrate in that space. So this is the time for us to really stand up and make sure that we are protecting it, because we've come too far to have it all undone overnight. We've still got a heck of a long way to go. There's no doubting that, but we've come too far to let it get undone.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, I'm aware that we're in the dying moments of this here panel this afternoon. So I'm going to give each of you today is not just a panel, it's a call to arms. It's a call to action from our educators. I want you to, each and every person, whether you're an educator, whether you're an academic, whether you're a parent, whether you're a student, whatever your role might be, absolutely every single person has a role and a responsibility to ensure that we have the education system that our young people deserve. And it's not saying that everything that's coming down the line is bad. The priorities are bang on in terms of wanting to improve the outcomes and improve the system. It's just sometimes the methods and the means that we might disagree with. As I cough, as I'm ailing in the last few moments. So, starting with you, Cathy, what's one thing people can do tomorrow? And I'll stop joking.
Not panic. It's the first thing I would say, and just think what are we going to what are our strengths? What are we going to do to preserve those? And that includes creativity and the work that's gone on. Because I see a huge difference over the last few years. Huge. So it has become part of just how things are done around here. It's part of who we are. So just think about, remain confident about preserving that.
Fantastic. And at the end of the day, I always thought, even in an open plan school like the one that I run, when you walk into a classroom, you have every opportunity to do what you know is the right thing to do. And we do have a huge amount of agency as educators, as school leaders, to do what we believe is the right thing. Niki, what's your call to arms? What should everyone be thinking about doing come tomorrow or tonight even?
Oh, I'm muted.
Unmute for a start. I'm a huge believer in the whakatauki, popoia te kākanokia puawai. Nurture the seed and it will blossom. So the way we nurture it is have conversations, get out there in our networks, be strong, be proud of who we are as educationalists, because we have a moral imperative to make sure that we're doing the right thing for our kids.
And all of you, if you're in a school, get your boards of trustees up to speed. Get them on the Aotearoa Educators Collective. Get them reading the mag review. Get them across the details, because to them, if they're a parent on a board, the sound bites might sound very appealing in terms of the solutions and the interventions and some of those silver bullet solutions. So make sure that they're on board. They're our allies for sure. What about you, Jenny? What's your challenge? Your sort of idea about what people can be doing?
I think I would like everyone to have at least one conversation tomorrow about what we talked about this evening and to share a few suggestions. And I would like them to think also about who they can talk to from another sector, because I'm an early childhood person and I feel like we don't have enough cross communication across primary, early childhood and secondary. So if you know somebody who's not in your sector, can you also arrange to have a coffee with them and just keep domino effect spreading the word that we all need to be together on this one.
Awesome. And in terms of where I come from, I can't help thinking that you can also, the social media isn't the be all and end all, but it is a platform. Every one of you has permission to write a blog, to record something, to speak up and speak out. Go and be a positive agitator online. Don't just complain about things. Be part of the solutions and come up with some ideas and interventions that we can do better. I think there's so much opportunity. We are also one of the few countries where you can reach your MPs and you can reach your local politicians, even if they are, doesn't matter what party they're from. Get in the ear of your local politician and have conversations about what you know matters and what you know works, and keep it really positive. Talk about the wins and what is doing well. So in closing, one thing I would like to say, that if you are not a member of the Aotearoa Educators Collective, head over to the website, head over to Facebook, sign up to the Substack. If you'd love to support us, there's an opportunity for you to make a contribution through subscribing to Substack, and that will help us to have someone that can be an administrator and can organise future events. Over on Facebook, please let us know what you'd like to hear from our next panel, who you'd like to hear from, if you'd like to be involved. If you have stories you would like to share, if you would like to publish on the Substack, we would love to hear from you as well. As we say, we are not a political beast. We have opinions about politics. We have opinions about policies. We are all positive. We are all proactive, and we are all practitioners. We are academics. We are teachers. We are educators, and we are people that care first and foremost about our young people. So, and first, I would like to thank Niki and Cathy and Jenny for joining us this evening. I would like to extend a thank you to Stephen Lethbridge, who has been helping behind the scenes, and Sarah, who helped set up our panel. I would also like to make a shout out to Liam, who has been integral to getting the Aotearoa Educators Collective off the ground and continues to work tirelessly behind the scenes, even when he is overseas on a holiday. So thank you to you, Liam, if you're lurking out there. I am now going to close with the karakia. Kia whakairea te tapu, kia waitea ai te ara, kia turuku whakatahea ai, kia turuku whakataha ai. Homie, huie, taiki. To everyone still with us here this afternoon, have an absolutely fantastic evening. We look forward to seeing you online and joining us once again at the Aotearoa Educators Collective. Good evening.